For posterity's sake, let's just throw out a few of the terms that we think are kind of in right now, so that 10 years from now, when I listen to this, I can laugh about how outdated it is or isn't.
Okay.
Um, what are some in terms?
Oh, simp.
Phrases, simp.
Uh,
Yeah,
Yes,
simp.
definitely.
it's like the most in term right
I
now.
think that's the most yeah, I think that's one where I still like will chuckle when I see that used, right? Because I think every meme or slang kind of has like their expiration date, and that hasn't passed yet. So what are some other
Yeah.
terms? I remember a really old term, not really old, but when I was in middle school, it was like swag, right? Um,
I still say swag, but kind of like ironically, or I'll
yeah,
say swaggy. I'll type swaggy a lot, and then half the time, like Hannah on or people will be like, "Ew, stop! Like, why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "I'm just being funny." But other half people are like, "Yeah, swaggy," and so I'm like, "Is it possible to take something that's so dumb that it becomes funny, and then it's cool because it's funny?" So I don't know. I use things ironically, but sometimes it's like, are you using it ironically?
come back to another episode of Nuanced Nonsense. We're not experts, but we just like recording. This is your co-host Alex.
Your other co-host Ben.
And today I brought on my friend Tanner Tran. He was a junior when I was a freshman. That's how I met him. We were both in the same ministry at UT, WACM, and now he's working as a software engineer for Capital One in Washington D.C. Though he's back in Plano right now for the quarantine. Is there anything else you want to add to your introduction?
No, I think you did a great job. Thanks for having me on here.
For sure. Usually when we start off on this podcast, we like to ask kind of like a lighthearted softball question. So, what was the last song you listened to, and is it usually from like the type of music or type of genre that you usually listen to?
The last song I listened to was probably a Han song, Honne. It's called "Free Love," and kind of discovered it on my Discover playlist. But I love Han in general,
Wait, is
so
that
I've
how
been
you
listening to that
pronounce
like
that artist's
nonstop.
name?
Is it Han? Honne? How do you guys say it?
I don't know. My friend told it to me as Honey.
Honey? I might get like some serious heat about this. I mean, Honey it is then Honey.
I have
I
no
don't
idea, to be
I don't
completely
I
honest.
know.
don't think I've ever pronounced his name. Like I've always like there's some words where like you always just read and then you would just never say it because like you have no reason to talk about with someone. So I just never know how to pronounce that word. And I think like his name is one of those words.
Or you just say it, but you have like no confidence in it. You just kind of, it's Han. You know,
Dude,
just not really sure.
you always gotta fake it till you make it. And then
Yeah, for
people
sure.
will be convinced that your way is the right way. And then you completely mess up the whole English pronunciation for that word, at least for your community.
I think there are always kind of two camps to that really. When you get called out, you either one, you double down, be like, no, I think I'm right, or you're like, oh, is that how you say it? And it's like very embarrassing either way. But it's funny to see how many people just double down and be like, no, I'm not wrong. I'm gonna say it that way. That's definitely right. You're like, no, you're definitely wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think growing up, so my parents, like since they were like first generation immigrants, they didn't teach me English, right? Because that's not their language. So then I went into like kindergarten not really knowing English, and then I got put into ESL, and then it was embarrassing. But then what I'm trying to say is like basically there are a lot of words to this day like I don't really know how to correctly pronounce, and I get roasted from like my friends because they're just like, Alex, how are you not pronouncing like epitome correctly? I used to pronounce it epitome, and then people would just be like, dude, I think you're a fob. And then in my head, I'll be like, it's because I had my English upraising was basically that of a fob, because I basically had to like learn like from hooked on phonics to like learn English, and that's like my defense. But then, other people are just like, I had the same experience and I know how to pronounce words. And I'm just like, okay, you win for today.
Like that's
No,
also
that's really interesting.
something I noticed about Alex, like rooming with him. I never wanted to bring it up because I never knew what the cause was. But it's like, for example, like you say tastes, like with that extra like syllable tagged onto the end.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Say it. Say it. Say it. Tastes.
Taste?
I don't know, like, and
Was it tasted?
like whenever you it's like with the S at the end, like ES, like you add that extra is at the end. I mean, I think it might trigger you to not do it now.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like because I'm put on the spot, I probably will pronounce it correctly. But yeah, there are definitely words where like I remember like I couldn't pronounce three for the longest time. Like I would actually say like three or free. I'll pronounce it like free. Um, and that's why I'm bad at learning languages.
You know, I was in the same boat as you. I learned Vietnamese before English. And so when I came into kindergarten, I think dad had to sit me down and say, okay, this is how you say bathroom, here's how you say restroom, and that kind of thing. But I wasn't in ESL. I never was. And I don't remember learning English, but I know for a fact that I like didn't know it. So I guess it was kind of like a trial by fire. Like, let's just take 5-year-old Tanner and like throw him to the wolves and like, let's just see what happens to him. And I remember my friends were in ESL and stuff like that, but I guess it turned out okay. Yeah, it was weird. I just have no recollection of learning English, but I know for sure that I did not know any going into kindergarten. So one of the words I always mispronounced was misled. I think maybe up until college, I would say misled. Like, dude, he totally like they were just misled and confused. And someone was like, "Are you serious? Like, you mean misled?" Like, oh no, not like this, not like this. I'll always remember that in particular.
To
Yeah,
be fair though, I feel like English is like a terrible second language. Like if you're not
oh,
in,
it's very bad.
it's horrible.
It's
Yeah,
very
for
bad. It's
sure.
super bad. All the rules get broken, and you can't teach anybody, and they get really confused. It's really terrible.
Yeah, I just remember like listening to like really fluent like people who can speak English, but it's like that's their second language. Like they do a really good job, but then like it still sucks because like all the comments are like flaming them like, oh, you pronounce like drama as a drama, you know? And then I'm like, but you still understood what he was saying. Like, does it matter? And then I was also thinking just like for a lot of people who speak English as their first language, they can't speak like another second language, right? Like in my case at least, like I lost the ability to speak like Cantonese and some Mandarin in order to become a true American who can only speak English. And sometimes I'm like sad. I'm like, dude, I wish I was bilingual, you know? Like, I think it's just cool to like, because I think the very first thing to appreciate like your own home culture is like speaking the language, right? And now at times like I feel like a little weird when I'm like, oh, like I really care about I don't know whatever's going on in Hong Kong or whatever is going on in like Asia, but I don't speak the language. Like, do I have the right to, you know, stuff like that?
You're saying that you used to be able to know it, but then as you learned English, you kind of left it behind, and now when you go back, it's difficult.
Yeah, like I can understand. I don't even want to say conversationally. I can understand like basic cancel. If they're going to like deep stuff or like they're like singing or watching a movie, it's a lost cause. But I can understand enough where like, my parents can speak to me in Cantonese and not have to resort to English that much, and then I can just speak to English to them. But yeah, that's like the extent of my Cantonese. I remember when I was young, I could speak a lot of Cantonese, and I could even speak some Mandarin because I think I had like a Shanghainese babysitter. But those were the good old days.
Now, when you do speak Cantonese now, do you have an English accent, or do you kind of you speak with the correct accent? It's just your vocabulary is limited.
I have an accent for sure. I just earlier today I was trying to pronounce like one of my dad's friends' name because he's a very interesting guy. I just remembered because he actually I won't go into it. That might be giving too much away. But anyway, I was just trying to be like, oh, what was his name again? My dad said his name, and then I was trying to repeat what my dad was saying, but then it was just like off. You know, like you could tell I had no idea what I was saying. And it's just kind of weird how like you can hear something in your head and you know exactly how it should sound, but then like how you're actually saying it comes off like very off. You know, it's almost like you can't control. It's like if you're trying to control like your arm or something, it's like there's like a lag, you know, or it's not reaching the peak performance that you want.
Yeah, yeah. In your mind, you know how it sounds, but then you just can't quite create it.
Dude, I
Mhm.
feel that so much learning Spanish in like middle school, high school. it's like in my head, I'm like, okay, this is a sentence I want to say. I'm saying, especially when they had like you do like the speaker test like on this, it's like it's hard for you to hear yourself. So then I'm like, oh, dude, I'm like killing it, and then I hear it myself back. I'm like, oh my god, stop.
Yeah, those listening tests, speaking like IP tests, dude, got so nervous. I would can my entire response. I would know exactly which transition words to use, what idioms to throw in. You sprinkle, everything to fill the rubric, and uh, just really had it like down pat. I just didn't want to say anything that was out of line or off script. But I did really like learning, taking language classes in school.
What? Oh, I was going to ask, like, what like language classes did you take? I guess aside from Spanish.
So I took French, starting in 7th grade, and I took it all the way through 11th. Took the AP test for that and everything too. So I really committed to it. I liked it a lot, and it was pretty helpful going overseas a couple times. First time was like 2013 or 2012. It was like second year of French, and I was in France and asked for directions, and then they like they just replied to me in English. I was like, okay, was it that obvious? Was it that bad? And then I went over to Canada. I had some family in Montreal, and they were like, or in Quebec, and they're like, no, like your French is all wrong. Here's our French, and the Canadian French and the actual French is like really different. And so they taught me like this bastardized version of French, and I came back to France like 2018 or whatever, and I was just like, it was all messed up. Still super nervous, and you just don't quite have the confidence. But I always thought it was really useful to learn and had a lot of fun. And even to this day, sometimes I kind of think through the words in my mind. I'm like, how do you say this again? How would you say this sentence again? So some of it has stuck over the years, even though I never use it.
But what were you going to say, Beth?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this because I feel like my Thai speaking would follow a very similar route to Alex's, in the sense of like I knew how to speak it when I was a kid, and I could, and then like at some point like English got learned. I don't even know which language came first, to be honest, because like I feel like my memories back then are very, very hazy. But like one came before or after the other, and then one got lost, right? But I could still understand Thai. And so what happened was like I was only at an understanding level. I couldn't really talk back until I went back to Thailand for an extended period of time. And I was just like on my own because I was like doing a volunteering thing. And what happened was like it was just like you're in the fire, right? You have to learn how to talk. Otherwise it's like, what are you doing? And so like I learned how to speak it like really quickly. And I think the basis is like understanding it. So I feel like Alex, if you did something similar, I feel like it would come back to you like really fast because you're like trial by fire.
That's a good point.
I mean, there's a reason why they say immersion. Really, immersion is the fastest way to learn. Throwing yourself into the fire.
You're right. Because I guess, yeah, there's some psychological, maybe impulse in like your head that's kind of just like, oh, like I'm in a safe environment. Like they can just speak English back to me. That if I had to like speak this language in order to like save my life or something, like I guess you go all out.
Yeah, you're just surrounded by it, not only by necessity, but the media, advertising, people on the street, stuff like that. I imagine it would be pretty fast.
That kind of reminds me of tourism, actually, in terms of like immersion in some way, because like I think in the very large cities there are touristy locations in that city where you can go to visit that city and you're not actually visiting the real Paris or the real London or the real Beijing, right? But then people are like, oh, I want to go, like if you want to visit somewhere, like you should like actually like live there, like that's how you really experience the city. And yeah, it just kind of makes me think like, oh, like the stuff that's like considered safe or comfortable is like, or like what's going to be in like your little bubble when you go travel, like that's not the real experience of going to that city. And I just thought that was kind of interesting how I guess it's directly tied to language, right? Because when you're going to a place you're not familiar with, like you don't know the language. So if you go to a place that has more English and a place that's like not necessarily English speaking, then of course it won't be the real experience. But yeah, I guess I wonder like, what are your thoughts on like, I guess, immersion tourism? I don't even know if that's a thing, but yeah.
So I've told this to Alex many times, but I went to China before going to college, and I'm not Chinese. So like I know zero Chinese. And so my cousin just taught me like one phrase. It's like "Tai Go Ren," which is just like I am Thai. So just to tell people I don't speak Chinese. And so I remember like I went there to visit my cousin because they were studying medicine in China and they went from Thailand to China. And so there was like a lag period, right? Where like I have to get to China without their help. I have to just go alone. And I remember going there and I was like, oh my God, dude, not knowing like absolutely any of the language is so detrimental. Like when you go to like very heavy tourism spots, like when people know English, it's really helpful because then it's like if you don't know anything about anything, people just like look at you, they ask you stuff, and then you don't like it just completely over your head. So it felt really bad having to like use a map and just like matching symbols of like on the street to the map. But I mean, I think it's a good experience if you have like some like understanding the language because then it'll like really build up really fast. Like the immersion thing of learning language, like it'll build itself up really fast. Where you have no knowledge or recollection, then it's like, man, it's tough.
I think the main idea and things that people would really appreciate is they just want to see you try to learn the language. And I know like I just use Parisians as an example because they kind of have a reputation for being really snobby or mean.
Mm.
But I think at the end of the day, it's like if someone comes and they show effort and they're trying, and maybe they have a dictionary, they're reading from it. That's a lot better than just like you speak English, you know, and you got the touristy spot. Like, you speak any English, and yeah, that's one of the things I've thought about, even in terms of travel. And obviously, none of it is happening right now. But even before, I was thinking like generally when people go and travel, they kind of have this consumer mindset of I'm going to go to this place and let me just take in all that it has and be a consumer of that culture, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I've also just thought like, what would it look like to travel somewhere and kind of serve in a way or to be alongside of them instead of just saying like I'm a stranger in your land and give me all that you have to offer. And I think that's kind of a radical way of viewing travel in general. And I've tried to be more mindful about that as I've gone around over the last couple of years, just thinking about, okay, how can I not just be here to get stuff from here, but really to learn and understand and try to put effort towards that end. So yeah, that was just something I've been thinking about for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool and interesting like kind of philosophy that kind of applies to life in general. Just like because when you're in an unfamiliar environment, I think most people's instinct is like, well, I have to be here for a reason. Like if I'm not getting something out of this, then like there is no point in me going out of my comfort zone. And then I guess B is just like, how can I get out of here as quickly as possible? And yeah, I guess kind of thinking about that, I'm like, oh, like I guess like traveling and vacationing is like very similar in that regard, where you're kind of like, I'm here to have fun, and I'm not here to have fun. This being in the city is a waste of time, or it's not a good city. It didn't provide much to me. And I guess B is just like you're kind of expected to have a certain like length of time, like you're in a city. Like when you're planning a vacation, you need to be there for a certain amount of days, which is like there's a reason, there's an understandable reason for that, in that you're probably working and you can't be there forever. But I remember when Ben and I were we were supposed to go to Japan, a very basic post grad senior trip that
As one
we
does.
we were going to, and then I remember we wanted to travel around Japan because we were ambitious and didn't know how to plan vacations. But anyway, so like Japan's a large country. There's a lot of cities to explore, and I just remember we're just like, how long should we be in each city, right? We wanted to go to each prefecture, which is also very ambitious. There's a lot of prefectures. Takes a lot of time, and we quickly realized that. At first, we were like, okay, if we're in Japan for a month, that's very generous, and we can explore all the prefectures. And that was incorrect, because it takes a long time to kind of go like down Japan and go back up. And we were trying to think like, how do I like, or how do we like, set base in like Tokyo, or like, start in Hokkaido and like go down to all the way down like Kyushu or whatever, right? And I guess like I realized that like we were trying to, be like, okay, let's make sure we're here for 5 days in this city and then 2 days in this other city because it doesn't look as cool. And we were kind of like, oh, this is kind of dismissive of like, I guess the city, right? Because like, how can you really know or appreciate a location if you're only there for like 2 days and like you're gonna be sleeping, like you're probably gonna be sleeping like during the nights, right? And I remember like there was one friend, I think, or a mutual friend that we had, that like how he traveled was like he just it was very on the fly, where like he would book tickets whenever he felt like leaving. So like some places like he would be there for a really long time, and then other places, I guess if it wasn't it, then he would just move on. And I was like, oh, like this is like kind of the antithesis of what we're taught, in that like most parents or like kind of society is like, you need to be here for this location, kind of hit off all the checkpoints, like go visit all the museums and the attractions. But then he was kind of just like living life in that city, and I was like, okay, I actually like that'd be really cool to do, and like maybe we should do that whenever we go to Japan. Part of it was also just like we were just being lazy and we didn't want to plan, but then it didn't matter in the end because of COVID hit.
Yeah, I think it's okay, especially when you have specific time parameters that you're trying to work within. You do want to have some kind of idea of like, we're going to spend some time here and then we'll spend time there. But when you kind of dig and drill down to another level, it's like, how prescriptive do you want to be? And I know that my nature is to be like, I know exactly where I'm going to be at exactly what time, and I've built in some buffer 15 minutes in case this is really cool. We can tack on 15 minutes here at the beginning and end, and that'll transition us quite nicely to the next place, which, you know, where we'll be at 11:45 and 45 seconds. And you know, I've been like that in the past. But then you get there, and you're like, this is awesome. Like, we can just spend the whole day here. So I think it's totally okay to kind of have a plan. And but then when you come in, it's like, how open are you to the spontaneity and whatever actually comes up? Are you so married to that plan? And this can, I guess, kind of apply to life too. But it's like, are you going along with it and enjoying what you really enjoy, or do you have a preconceived idea of like, I have to follow this plan and I have to go step by step like that? Um, I found at least when you're there in the moment and you're experiencing it and you're enjoying it, whatever, your plan just goes out the window. You're like, let's just do whatever we want. Let's just let's do whatever we want.
Wait, have you watched Parasite?
I have.
Oh yeah, it's like that. It's like that. This is more of a darker term, but it's like that scene at the end when like they're lying in like that gym because like their place got flooded, and he's just like, and like the son's like, oh, what's the plan, Dad? To like kick out the housekeeper, and then um the dad's like, he just gave up on his plan. He's just like, the best plan is no plan, you know, because it'll always let you down. And then I just
Yeah.
remember thinking, dang, that's like super depressing, right? But then I was kind of just thinking about, I mean, maybe a little bit even what we talked about yesterday in the prep session about like, you know, kind of 5 year plans, and like, you know, where we see ourselves in the future. You know, do we want to move locations or switch jobs? And yeah, a lot of times like life just doesn't really turn out the way you expect it to. But I was just kind of thinking like, yeah, I guess like, do you think like there's like the right philosophy in life, in like terms of right, like you should have a right mix of being planned or spontaneous, or is it like it leans toward one way or the other? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, I think there is a right way to go about planning and a wise way to go about planning. And like the scripture is like, if you acknowledge God in your planning, He will establish your steps, right? And so I think there is a real wisdom to saying, hey, I'm going to have a plan because it means that I'm mindful and thoughtful about where I want to be and what I'm going to be doing, and I'm not just being lazy about it. I'm actually giving it some thought because it matters. But I think one of the biggest things that mistakes that I make and other people make too is just not factoring in other things in their plan. Like, I guess for believers, I'm like, when was the last time you planned something and then you planned for God, or you actually factored in God into it and said, if the Lord wills, we'll go here and do this and that. If the Lord wills, we'll do this. I don't think people do that. I think people just make a plan. They say, this is my idea of what I'm going to be doing, and there we go. And so inevitably, when things come up or whatever, you're like, well, what happened to my plan? But if you approach it and you say, if the Lord wills, we'll do this or that, or I'm not so attached to this plan, then you build in that possibility. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to lower your expectations or think that it just won't be as good. In fact, I've found, my last 5 or 6 years, and a lot of my friends, if they listen to this, they'll kind of remember me saying this. I could not have possibly planned out any singular year that I've gone through since the beginning of college. Like at the beginning of the year, if you said, what do you think your life looks like at the end of this year? I could have never predicted it, but it has always turned out way better than I could have imagined. And I just think that's crazy, because a lot of times the visions that we have for ourselves and the ideas are just like, you just can't think of anything better. You're like, this perfect idea of what my life will be, I can't imagine it being any better. And inevitably at the end of the year, And I do this every year. I just think back, I'm like, holy, I could not have imagined everything that would have transpired throughout the course of this year. Here we are, and yeah, I'm so thankful. It's kind of funny because now I think about this year, I'm like, did any of us see this coming? Like, of all the, preacher, yeah, we're gonna have 2020 vision, church. Like, did anybody see this coming? Like, what's gonna happen in this year? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's crazy because like we're only in July, so there's a good half of the year that could be completely different than the first half.
Let's hope that it is, because they really have us in the first half. Not gonna
They
lie.
really had us in the first half. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Ben?
I just think it's like I agree a lot with Tanner because like I remember us talking to another friend about like expectations going into college versus like reality of college, right? It's like we were talking specifically about like friends, like who did you expect to stay friends with versus who are you actually friends with? And it's like the overlap is like very minimal. Like in a Venn diagram, it's like very, very slight overlap, but like generally it's like the things that actually happen you could have never expected in your like predictions, right? It's just like just totally like there's no way, like unless you saw the future, that's the only way, and so I'm kind of like in agreement to like it's not a bad thing to plan because I'm also one that's like I like plans, like I like knowing I'll do this at this time, but there's also some level of like you can't be too strict with your plan, otherwise it sort of like muddies up what like could be happening. Like you sort of squander some of your opportunities like for things that you could never expect that could be like even better than this like preconceived idea that you have of like it's the best, the best is still like it could be like way up here and you just can't even conceive it yet.
Yeah. And I find that it often turns out fine in the end. Like you can have all sorts of twists and turns, and some of them are painful. And I'm not gonna like sit here and be like, well, it always turns out great in the end, whatever. But it kind of does. Like it's tough along the way. Maybe there's some detours you really don't expect or anticipate. But in the end, doesn't it always kind of turn out okay? And I think that's the key. And I think if people took a step back and believed that, and actually believed that, like, hey, this is my plan, but I think it'll be okay whether or not it turns out the way I expect. Then I think you go through life or you go through your career or whatever, and you have so much more like peace and joy, like as cheesy as it is, like you actually have legit peace and joy because you're not banking, you don't have all your eggs in this one basket of things going the way that you need them to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot about life. No, this sounds really pessimistic, but it's not as pessimistic as it really is. But it's really just dealing with failure and what do you gain from failure, right? Because I remember like all the time, like just like for me growing up, like I just felt like I could never be like as skilled or as great as like people in terms of like grades or sports. I used to swim, and like I was always one of the slower kids, and that would always like really wear on me. And then when going to college, I was like, oh, I'm not the best programmer, nor am I the most popular person. Like there was just so many things in life where like I literally felt like I was a failure, and but even like looking back, I think running into these obstacles like helps you appreciate like what you already did have, and like what room you still have to grow, right? Because in a lot of ways it's just like I think even succeeding too much, it can kind of lead to like kind of a pressure cooker of like expectations where you kind of feel like, oh, like I have to like manage reaching these expectations every single time, and if I don't, then everything's gonna blow up, right? And I feel like honestly, the earlier you fail, the better, because you have more time to really deal and understand with that, right? I feel like the people who kind of got everything they wanted in life, like because eventually at some point you will fail, like you're not going to get everything you want, and I feel like the later you have to deal with that, the worse it is.
Yeah, that was definitely me growing up. Like, kind of sort of always got what I wanted and never really had to struggle through anything real. And it wasn't really until college when every one of those things that I thought was always going to go perfectly started falling apart one way or the other. And I think those were just like the pivotal moments of when you're faced with the reality of like, I'm just not getting what I want. Plain and simple. What are you going to do? And I think those are like turning points. And I agree. I think the earlier it happens, the better it is. And I see, whether it's parents coddling their kids or kids and their expectations, you just kind of go into life like, I think everything's going to turn out exactly the way I want. And it's like the longer that's true, the longer that holds true, the rougher it's going to be down the road, and you kind of hate to see like what's going to happen later on. So I definitely agree. It's interesting though, because like you were talking about swimming, and here's a question for you guys, I guess. So much of like sports and hobbies and school and life and everything, there's this idea of like you have to be the best, you have to be number one or whatever. Everyone knows that as good as you are at something, there's somebody better than you. So because of that, what would you guys say is the whole point? Like, why swim? Why try anything if you're not going to be the best at everything? What's even the point?
So I think I don't know like if I can attest to like there's a purpose to like playing sports, but like I can say that from an early age I played competitive tennis, and like I sort of figured out early on that like, hey, there's someone better than me. I can't like beat all these guys. Like, you know, I lose. And so like I just remember as a kid, like I was like, damn, like I got really beat up over it. I was like, oh, like why can't I win? Like why can't like I be the best, you know? And I just realized like as I grew older, I was like, it's just not gonna play out your way, you know? Like it just isn't like that. And so I remember like I played less tennis sort of like in the high school years because I think I was focusing a little more on studies and getting to college. And then in college, I remember I was playing tennis after not playing for a while with one of my friends, and we were just talking about like, damn, you know, I miss this. Like this is really, really fun. And like that's when I realized like, hey, like being competitive about it is like, sure, it's cool. It's like it is fun in its own right. But I think the point for me is to have that fun, because I think it was something that like it happened in the beginning. Like it was fun in the beginning, and I think like you lose it along the way if you get really competitive about something.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, what
for
do you think,
me,
Alex?
yeah, for me, kind of like what Ben says, just like if you really like doing something, like it brings you joy, then like, you know, just do it, right? Like that's what makes it fun. Um, so I guess like I don't know, I feel like this applies for a lot of things, like not just sports, but like just no particular hobbies. Or I remember like having this conversation with Ben about this podcast. You know, this podcast isn't super big; it'll probably never be big. But like we were always kind of like in the mentality like that's okay, right? Like well, part of us like we don't really want to blow up even if we could, because you know that leads to all sorts of ramifications and responsibilities, and I don't know if we could deal with that. But sometimes like people, I think the very first question people ask you or ask us when like we start this podcast is kind of like, how many listeners do you have, you know? And then I remember my parents would, when they found out I had a podcast, they would ask, and I'd be like, okay, I think we have more than 5 now. I think we have 40, which I'm proud of, you know, myself. um but I remember just like, oh, we have like 5, and I guess my dad's like, what's the point of doing this podcast, you know, if nobody listens, right? And then I was like, well, because like, you know, Ben and I like doing it, you know. I think it's just fun talking with other people, you know, hearing their perspectives or having random conversations with people. And, you know, I think it's helped me a lot in a lot of ways. Like now I'm a lot better at coming up with like questions in my head to ask people stuff, as seen with this episode. Um, I'm a lot better
Did you
at,
just plug yourself? You just plugged yourself. That's hilarious.
yes, I just plug myself. You know, I've gotten used to plugging myself on episodes because that's what you have to do. And I think there's just a lot of things where like, you know, I think like through your craft and like doing something, like you're able to like learn and grow like as a person that you wouldn't necessarily have done before if like you just didn't want to do it because like you weren't ever going to be the best, right? So I think there is value in the process, you know, versus results. And sometimes going back into sports, like when I watch like a sports team, like I'm a fan of the Mavericks, right? And we haven't been good for a very long time. Um, a lot of people are just like, oh, I don't want to be fans. I don't want to be a fan of the Mavs anymore because like they're not going to win the championship anytime soon. You know, like they don't deserve my fandom. I'm like, all right, y'all are bandwagoners. Like we didn't need y'all anyway. And then 2, I was like, where's the loyalty? You know, like you're supposed to like. I think what makes stuff special is that like you had to suffer, you had to experience like bad periods of games and no results, and you had to like literally come up with a reason to like, this is why I'm still watching these games, because like it's literally terrible like watching them lose, you know, so often. And I think it's like those little things in life where you're like, okay, we didn't get this and that, but you know, like Luca scored a really, you know, cool half court shot, and you know that made my day. Or I had some friends and we went over to like so and so's house and we watched like the Mavs game and that was really fun. Like I think it's like those memories, like those that is what makes it worth it to like do something even if like you're not like led to glory, right? And that kind of applies to like anything, whether you're just like pursuing a job or you ask some girl out that who didn't like you back. That doesn't like erase like all the good times like you had conversations with her. So it's just like, yeah, I'm rambling now, but it's just like basically the little things in life I think like make it worth it, and it's not necessarily like the big pivotal moments in your life that you will be defined by.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it when you said like I do it because it's fun. And I think if you don't start with that, you might develop it over time, but you might not. Either way, if you're singularly motivated by this competitive nature or this results-oriented approach, you're just not going to have fun. Like I watched the Mavs when they were good and bad because I like the game, because I like the team, not because I only want to win. It was the same with music too. I remember when I first started playing piano really early on. I did it because mom and dad told me to do it. Sign up for lessons. I would cry while you practice. Yeah, you know the drill. You cry and then you lie about whether you practice or not. You show up to lesson like butterflies in your stomach. But after a few years, it kind of became like I do this because I actually really like it, because I actually really like music. And for me, I think that realization came fairly late. Maybe even after I stopped taking lessons, I would think like, why do I still play piano? I was like, oh, because I actually really like it. So I think sometimes you need a push to start something, and you kind of drag your feet. You don't really want to do it, but at some point, if you're really going to stay in it, if it's really going to have any staying power, you actually have to like it. You actually do this podcast because you guys enjoy doing this podcast, not because you're trying to hit some amount of listeners after a month or whatever. And if you started off and said, okay, we're going to get 1,000 listeners after a month, and our goal is 10,000, and let's just do it that way. I don't think it would be half as good as it is today. You guys do this because you like to, because you want to, and if people listen to it, they do. And if they don't, then you have fun and you enjoy it, and that's the point.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of a video I watched. It's not like a video talking about this, but it's a video of people demonstrating why like results behavior mindset may not be that great. So basically, there's this YouTube channel called Cancel Mando. They kind of do like funny skits in either Cantonese or Mandarin because they're all like Chinese Canadians, and they were trying to get 1 million followers or something like that on Chinese TikTok, and they would work really hard to come up with like funny skits that they could do on TikTok. And it's kind of crazy how like I think when you're in the entertainment business, like you're doing a lot of stuff that seems natural, but it's actually very planned, And I think when people think like, oh, like vloggers, like they have so much fun all the time, every day, right? But then like honestly, vlogging now is kind of like the modern version of reality TV that's been adapted to YouTube, and you kind of have to plan out these skits, like these pictures are posed for, and I think it's all kind of done in the name of um, like like to be famous, like you're never really doing it in order to just be like, oh, hey, here's my life, like just it's like be friends with me even though we don't know each other. Like it's through the power of technology that you can kind of get to know me. When that's the message they're trying to give, but the motivation is very rarely the same or lines up like that. And I guess I just thought that was interesting, that a lot of people kind of go into like vlogging or stuff like that, like on YouTube, to like get big or get famous when they still want to come off as like, oh, I'm just doing it for the joy and the love of the game, and then when people actually do, then like they're kind of ridiculed. It's like, oh, how old are you? Are you you're like, this is you're just a teenage dream. Like one day you'll grow up, you face the horrors of reality.
Yeah. And I think people are pretty good at recognizing what is authentic and what isn't. I don't know about you guys, but at least for me, you can kind of tell when someone is doing something or they're creating something and their heart's actually in it. You can see their enthusiasm or the way they do it, and you feel like there is real authenticity here. Like this guy's authentic, he's genuine. And then the other ones where you're like, dude, this guy's like following a template. He's telling you to smash that like button or whatever, and you're just like, I think people are quite good at sensing what is real and what isn't, and I think that authenticity is really attractive, and whether it's videos or blogging or whatever, even though you can actually, people kind of play the game and they'll maybe not really love the game. I think those who really do love, whatever it is that they're doing and creating are the ones that actually stay and endure. So that's kind of what I think.
I also think that like social media has had like a really, really like, I don't want to say negative because it has done a lot of cool things for society that's like you cannot like have replaced, right? But I think there is a lot of negative impact of social media on certain aspects of life. For example, like this, like the entertainment industry, it's very, very like numbers based. You got to hit the benchmarks. You got to hit like this. Like, for example, like advertisers, they want you to like do certain numbers. Otherwise they don't want to invest in you. Like there's a lot of that. And then also when you trickle it down to like an individual level, like people are looking, it's like, if you're not the best, like what's the point? Like I think it's a very, very sort of like push and pull sort of thing, because I think social media is good, like if you total it out, but like there are some pretty negative like drawbacks to it.
Yeah, like, do you guys both use Instagram? Do you both have Instagram?
Yeah.
So when you go on your main profile, I don't know if you guys have Finstas, but say you go on your main profile and you scroll through the pictures and stuff like that, how would you describe how closely it actually represents your life? What is the kind of image that you kind of crafted for yourself, if any? Or do you feel like, hey, this is actually, I'm posting whatever I really want and there's no shenanigans going on?
Yeah, so for me, I actually don't really post much on Instagram. I just follow a bunch of people. Like I just follow like, athletes or my friends. I think it's almost like my mentality is like, I have nothing interesting in my life to post, and I'm terrible. As we talked about this earlier, right before we started recording, but I am really bad at how do I say this? Like bluffing, I'm really bad at creating an image for myself, like I like to think I'm an honest man. So and in the end, I just don't really do anything. Like if you look at all the pictures on my Instagram, there are only one pictures of myself. Everything else is like something random. Like I remember I have one of like, I think one of my friends had a cup of water and he dropped like a Jolly Rancher in it and it turned red. And that was one of my Instagram photos. I think this was probably like during high school. So this was like pre IG models, pre like influencers. So like you kind of just post whatever the hell you want. But I feel like once like that era kind of came in, then I stopped, posting. I think my very last photo was like, I had to do something. It was like one of those like when you're in an like event or something, like in college, like they're like, post this on Instagram to win this challenge, so like your group can like win a prize or something. And that's like my very last post. So like literally my profile says nothing about me. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And Ben, I'll give you a chance to answer in a second, but like I just totally remembered, like there was sort of an age of innocence for social media. When you go back, maybe high school, middle school on Facebook, I posted about everything. I had no filter. I had nothing. I would post things like, it's sunny outside, hee hee XD. That does not reflect at all on me well, but it was sort of, I would say it was using it more for the pure, like that was what it was kind of designed for, people to put whatever they wanted on there and talk about whatever you wanted and share anything you wanted. But then all of a sudden there was kind of this age of understanding of like, oh, I gotta look good and I gotta seem really cool. So now I'm gonna dumb it down and delete my old statuses and only post the best pictures with really cool filters and like I just want everyone to want my life now. I feel like that's kind of the idea.
Wait, I totally agree with that. But before I answer, Alex, this is what I was talking about earlier. Like you said, says instead of says. And that's like what I meant. It's not anything like consequential. It's just, this is what I was talking about earlier. But anyway, yeah, like I feel like my Instagram is like, it's curated to some degree. Like I don't like filter it or edit it too much because I like being more genuine with my social media. But at the same time, I do agree. It is curated in the sense that like I want to be posting my pictures and like on Facebook, like I'm not fucking making like these random statuses anymore. Like I don't even remember when's the last time I touched that button, like to make a status. And so I think social media back then was like, it felt like it just served an entirely different function than it does today.
Yeah, I would be writing on people's walls all the time, poking people, having poke wars. And
Mm,
I know a certain post on my wall had like 300 comments on it. Like we had a conversation on the wall post where it had 300 plus
I
comments.
remember that.
And then freshman year, oh man, this is probably the height of my social media kind of powers. But like, and a lot of people hearing this will know the story. But April Fools freshman year, my roommate was David Sung, and he was studying downstairs, and I just thought for some reason I was at the gym. I was like, Greg, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna troll the f out of this guy. And so I text him. I tell him, hey, playing basketball, kind of feel queasy. I don't feel great. I think I'm gonna head back to the room. And he replies and says, like, yeah, hey, take care of yourself. Like, get back here safely. So I get back to the room, and he's not there. He's downstairs in Jester East lobby studying. So I thought, okay, this is perfect. So I grab my toothbrush and I turn the sink on so it's like dripping water, and I just lie down on the ground. I'm like, all right, I'm dead. And I texted him like, I think I'm about to pass out. Or I texted a friend, and she was like, dude, Tanner's in trouble. You need to come and get and check on Tanner. David comes into the room and he opens the door in Jester, and there's a sink right there. So he opens, and usually when I'm in the room, the door is always locked. But it was unlocked that time. And he's like, oh my gosh. And he peers over the sink and he sees me, and I'm lying on the floor. I'm like, I'm dead. I'm holding the toothbrush. He comes in and he's like, oh my God. Oh my God. No, 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 no. Throws his backpack on the bed and just reaches down. He starts shaking me by the shoulders. Tanner, Tanner, come on, man. Don't die on me. Not, come on, Tanner, please. And to this day, this has to be my greatest, this is my Oscar moment. I somehow just resist the urge to laugh. I'm like completely slack. No laughing, no smiling, nothing, no response. I'm like totally limp. And he's like, oh, fuck. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And he starts pulling out his phone and calling a number. And at that point, I'm like, all right, he's calling police. So I'm like, April Fools. And I say all this because he's like, oh, like, I hate you so much. I'm going to throw your MacBook out the window. But he makes a status about this that night on Facebook. And he says, I hope I hope you guys had a great April Fool's Day and your roommate didn't just fake die on you. And that status got a gazillion likes. And then I think some comments on there got like 100 plus likes on that status. And I was just like, dude, this is why social media is like so funny, because you can share stuff like this. But I just can't see something like that happening these days. Maybe with memes.
Mm. Yeah, that's actually like a good point. Like, I feel like Facebook was kind of just like this little playground that we all like inhabited. And there was no shame. Like, I remember, like, yeah, people would literally post. I guess the only thing that really happens with status now is like someone hacks your account, or hacks as in like you left your laptop open and they just say something like Alex is a dummy head or something, or like I like to eat poo poo or something, and then if you're lucky, like you get 80 likes on that or something. But other than that, like now, like the only time I see people sharing or like posting on their wall is like they're doing it for political reasons. So they're just like, hey, like I guess at least with the situation right now, it's just like, hey, remember to wear a mask. Remember to be aware about racism, stuff like that. But very rarely is it like someone is genuinely just like, yeah, I just moved into town. Like, I wonder where the best restaurant is. Like, there's not that many posts like that anymore. And I think it's
I
interesting
think
because,
that era of, sorry, go ahead.
oh, you can finish your thought.
That was like the era, the peak of Facebook, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but at least in my experience, it was kind of like the late 2000s into the mid 2010s. And
Mm.
it hasn't been the same since. It's become a platform, like you said, for different things.
Yeah, I agree actually. It's like I came in right around 2011, so I feel like that's kind of right during that peak, in the middle of that peak. And like I could slowly see, like, as I was like exiting high school into college, that Facebook kind of became a platform from old people. That's what these youngsters say these days. It's like really weird because like I remember like I had to do like since I was on core team for like my ministry for like ACM, like I remember like traditionally we just spread things through Facebook. Like that's super easy. It's a very college social network thing. And then the sad part was that a lot of these freshmen or their sophomores now, like they don't even use Facebook, right? They're just like, that's just what my grandma uses, and I'm just like, I'm only 3 years older than you, buddy. And it was really sad. And I just remember beginning, I just remember sitting there just like, are we really gonna try to plug stuff through Snapchat? Like, is this really the move? And I was like, nah, we're just gonna make them come to Facebook. Like, I am not creative enough to like plug stuff through like all these different like apps and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just kind of funny how like now there's kind of like this generational divide between social media. Like before, Facebook was like cool, now it's for old people and it's creepy and it's probably selling your data to God knows who. But yeah,
It is weird to think that there is an entire generation below us who just do not use the same platforms we do and are totally on a different level. I always felt like up until maybe a couple of years ago that I was, you were the in group. You knew what was cool, you knew what was trendy, and you understood what the main platforms were and all that. But now, like I heard from ACM, they're like, oh yeah, we're getting feedback that they're not using Facebook to be contacted anymore. Like that's not their main mode of contact anymore. I'm like, how are we supposed to tell them about these events? And I heard things like, oh, we use mostly Instagram for messaging, and I would say like, well, how do you have group messages on Instagram, and do you really use Instagram for DMing people, and that's your main mode? It just seems so like bare bones, but that's just not like, it's not what it used to be. And for the first time, I'm like, all right, I'm actually kind of behind the times.
Yeah, we actually talked about this the other day. It was like falling off the wagon is like, I feel like a lot of young people's greatest fears. Like when you realize you're like off the wagon, you're like on the road and you see it like slowly moving away from you, you're like, oh crap. Like
Yeah, it's funny because you're like, you don't necessarily want to be like the cool kid, but you also want to be hip to whatever's going on. Like, at least for me, and I'll just speak for myself, I don't care about if people think I'm like cool, right? I just want to be able to understand what all these references are and stuff like that. And so it's really interesting because I'm like, were there people who were older than I am, or just people I looked up to? I'm like, man, you're really uncool. You really don't understand like what's funny now. And then now I'm just like, wait, that's me. I'm like uncool now.
yeah, it's kind of crazy how quickly you can fall out of touch with stuff when you're not surrounded by like, I don't want to say the right people, but you're not surrounded by a group of people who are in the in for like everything, right? Like, yeah, I feel like no one particular, like most people don't particularly want to be cool, but nobody wants to be uncool, And it's
Yeah.
just yeah, I remember the first time I realized that. Actually, it's so stupid because he was only 2 years younger than me. But he was like explaining some term, like some slang that like I think everyone in my year did not get, and he was saying it like we were old. And I just remember thinking, bro, you were born in 2000. I was born in 1998. Okay, like calm down right now. But it's like it's kind of funny how like now I think about like the people who like my youth group, like ministry interns or even the staff I had at UT. They probably felt that way too, and like they were probably in their 20s at the time. Like to society, like they are young, but to us, we were like, oh, they're old, And I just want to apologize to all those people. You had a lot of patience with us, and now I know how it feels, and nothing I will say or do can ever erase the crimes I've committed against you. But I hope now I have empathy for y'all. That's all I can
wait,
say.
what was the slang term?
I don't remember. I don't want to remember.
For posterity's sake, let's just throw out a few of the terms that we think are kind of in right now, so that 10 years from now, when I listen to this, I can laugh about how outdated it is or isn't.
Okay.
What are some in terms?
Oh, simp.
Phrases. Simp. Yeah.
Yes,
Definitely.
it's like the most in term right
I
now.
think that's that's the most yeah, I think that's one where I still like will chuckle when I see that used, right? Because I think every meme or slang kind of has like their expiration date, and that hasn't passed yet. So what are some other
Yeah.
terms? I remember a really old term, not really old, but when I was in middle school, it was like swag, right?
I still say swag, but kind of like ironically, or I'll
Yeah.
say swaggy. I'll type swaggy a lot, and then half the time, like Hannah on, or people will be like, "Ew, stop! Like, why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "I'm just being funny." But other half people are like, "Yeah, swaggy." And so I'm like, "Is it possible to take something that's so dumb that it becomes funny, and then it's cool because it's funny?" So I don't know. I use things ironically, but sometimes it's like, are you using it ironically?
Oh yeah, I'm.
I was explaining this to a group of friends the other day. Did you ever use like INB4 when you were in like younger?
No, I know what it is, but I never used it.
I feel like I use that now unironically.
No, like I still use it too. It's just that like there's like certain subsects of like the internet that like just never was touched by this term.
Mm. Or
Yeah, I think that
actually,
also goes for like people who were never on like Twitch and don't really know like PogChamp or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
like the
yeah.
different ones.
yeah, I was gonna say like actually, I feel like memes are a lot cooler now. But I remember like back then, like there were just some like weird like anime, crap that you would see, or like they originated from like 4chan. Like I feel like if someone was like you're a memer, like that's not cool. But now like every like basic, I don't know, every basic like sorority girl or whoever, like they can be like, oh, I saw this meme on Twitter or I saw this meme on Instagram or Facebook. And it's all good. Like honestly, I feel like the future of Facebook, or I guess even young people, quote unquote, is literally like for all these meme groups, right? Like I feel like that's the main reason why a lot of college students or high school students will even have a Facebook, so they can be like, oh, I saw this post on like subtle Asian traits or Zoom memes for quarantines.
Why do you guys think memes are so popular? Like, what is it about them that makes it all of a sudden from something that was like uncool to something that everybody likes now? And you see corporate America, like companies with
Oh
memes. You're like,
no.
oh God, please! Like, why do you feel like it just has such a wide appeal?
I was watching a video about the history of memes. And like back then, like the history of memes was just like very, very just like making fun of like technical errors in like games or just like leet speak on like very like primitive games like RuneScape or something. And then like they slowly evolved into like more relatable memes. So like Rage Comics is like the first instance of where it's like you're trying to relate to the author, right? And then as like memes continue to go on in history, the ones that like it just generally has this trend of like increasing relatability. And so nowadays it's just like text boxes of like funny like quotes that someone says from like Twitter or something, or just like whatever is in like for the moment of like whatever meme. Like I don't even know what's in right now, but like it generally trends towards like relatability is my theory.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think that's what it is. It's like people read it and they're like, yeah, I get that, right? When you see it, like, yes, I understand that. I have that shared experience, and the formats change, like meme economy. Like, hey guys, are we buying this? Are we buying this format? Like, is there potential in this format? And I'm like, whatever the format is, it always goes back to relatability, and you can frame it in so many different funny ways in comics and images or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, it's funny because people get it. Like no matter what you're doing or whatever, you kind of understand it. I think that's what makes it so popular.
Dude, they should make like a meme stock exchange or something where it's just like, oh yeah, this. I'm willing to buy into this meme stock, and it's like trending upwards, or this meme stock is like losing me credibility and coolness or whatever, and I gotta sell. That'd be so cringy but funny to me. But yeah,
What's
I
the
definitely.
subreddit?
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a
that's the sub. There's a subreddit for that. Dang, I came up with that. This is what we call parallel thinking. Um, dude. Anyway. Yeah, I definitely agree in terms of like like relatability. I think what makes it special is not just the fact it's relatable though, but like it makes you feel like you're special. Like, oh, like this is a unique experience I have amongst a certain group of people, and I think really viral memes, kind of appeal to like a large group of people, but not large enough where it's like everyone, right? Like, so I feel like subtle Asian traits. I think at the time before, like there wasn't really anything like it. There was no way for um, the Asian diaspora, I guess, to kind of bond together over weird things their parents did. But it's not like subtle human traits, right? It's like still a specific group. But it was large enough where it got viral, right? But then I think over time, when like memes get kind of overused, is when like people realize that like, oh, this isn't that special anymore. Like everyone kind of knows what this is talking about. Like I don't think this is cool anymore. But then I think the next, big meme kind of comes when like someone's like, oh, that is something like I do, but like I don't really talk about because it's kind of just understood. Um, I don't, maybe an example would just be like, I think for a lot of people now, it's just like, oh, like when my parents come home and I haven't taken the meat out of the freezer yet. Like, I think that's kind of like a funny thing that like a lot of people have gone through their childhood, but they don't really talk about a lot. So in the first time you see, like, oh, this is hilarious, ha ha ha. Like, no, I'm a human being too. But then later on, you're just like, when you realize like everyone has that experience, you're like, this isn't that funny, you know. And then I think the next, I feel like things always pop out of nowhere because like people just haven't talked about it yet, and then it takes like one person to be like, oh hey, like I do this. Is like, is this? Do you guys also do this? And then you know it becomes big.
Also,
Yep.
like an interesting
And
thing that the video I watched talked about memes is like in today's meme culture, memes are seen as like high art, you know? Like, like if you think it's funny and it's not in trend, you're like low class. But if you like know the like up and coming stuff, you're like curator level, you know?
yeah, like you're trying to anticipate where people's tastes are going and what's going to be the next hot thing. And I did have a thought about subtle Asian traits. It's like people came into that group kind of at different points along their interest span. For example, I know there were some folks who joined and they're like, oh my gosh, like I have found a world of people who have the same experience as me. And oh my gosh, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. I can relate to that. But there are also people, and I think I speak for myself at least, I kind of grew up in, you know, Ben, you grew up in Plano too. So we kind of had a lot of Asians and, you know, had a lot of Asian friends throughout school, high school, into college. So there was already kind of a subtle Asians friend group. So when I came in, it was funny and it was exciting, but I think my interest kind of leveled off quickly. Whereas some people came in and this was totally new to them. Like this was a group of people who understood things and had shared experiences, and they're like, oh my gosh! And so they were like just going on the train, just hopping on. Whereas for me, I was like, yeah, I kind of get that. It's funny, but it's a little bit overdone. So I feel like people kind of came on at different spots depending on what their upbringing was or what their experience was going in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point actually, because I remember like following like Wong Fu or like you know other like current Asian actors or entertainers, and like you know they you know were second generation Asian Americans before like there were like that many, right? They grew up in a time where they literally didn't see anyone on TV that looked like them. So like you know for a lot of times like it just didn't feel cool to be Asian. So I think for them like maybe like older people like this is more cathartic basically. Like it's like oh like you know I see a group that you know I wish I could kind of talk about when I was a kid. So it's kind of like revisiting your childhood. When I think for maybe even like the younger generation, they're kind of like I think you know I think Asian Americans are like one of the rapidly growing like minority groups in the U.S. So for them, they're probably just like do people not take off their shoes like when they enter houses? Like dude, that's weird if like you don't, you know, or like people not eat rice or you know poke their chopsticks like upwards in the rice bowl or whatever. So yeah, I think I'm interested in seeing like how meme groups will kind of evolve as time goes by. You know, will be kind of seen as a relic? You know, will people view it as like AIM or like MySpace, where like it's just not cool anymore, but it'll be something like people will fondly look back at as like, oh, this was my youth. You know, this is what I spent on I guess the earlier days of the internet.
I would hope that they evolve. Like if you remember subtle Asian traits in its very early iterations, it had very specific memes, and it was like it wasn't like it was very targeted towards like Mandarin speaking like folk. Like it was like the box, and it's like this, and then it's like something that means like I'm stupid or like and
Yeah.
very like niche. But then like it slowly evolved as more and more people got in, and it like became more and more saturated. And so I think that like I would hope that meme groups and memes in general just continue to evolve and like change with the times so that they don't get stale. But you know that's just wishful thinking.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if memes stay with a general format of like an image and like whether panels or whatever, or I know there's like TikToks, so you have videos, stuff like that now. Maybe we just came up with the name for them, but they've always been around. It's just like the rise of the internet and like quick bites of like humor. It's just called a meme, and it can live on like forever, even if it looks totally different.
Yeah. Something else I've been kind of thinking about too is like now, like the only time you really use Facebook is kind of like to pub something, right? So you have, you know, frats or sororities, you know, changing their profile picture, and you have like an infamously long caption about how like it came out of their comfort zone, and they will never imagine themselves in like Greek life, and then you get like 500 likes, especially if you're a girl, and um, I just remember thinking like, oh, like I have a lot of free time, I guess. I'm gonna preface this before I say my next statement. But like, I was like, I wonder what posts get the most likes, aside from the fact that they're maybe good looking or something, right? And then I noticed that it's either be a really long, sappy caption, so kind of something like that, where you're being vulnerable, but not too vulnerable, where it's like creepy, or you post like a meme in your caption, right? And it's like kind of something funny. And then I remember like something. I remember like I was trying to combine the two for like when I had to promo like some ACM event in back in September, and I was like, okay, I wrote something kind of vulnerable, and then Ben roasted me, and I was like, you have a point. I don't want to be too vulnerable on this platform because I just don't want to be the same as those people, you know, as those Greek people. Nothing against Greek. It's just more like I just didn't want to like cheaply do something for likes. Honestly, I don't even know if people were aware of what I kind of saw, but I was like, I just didn't want to do it. So then I changed it to something like more generic. But then I was like, okay, I gotta come up with a meme. And then I remember I spent an absurdly a long amount of time just trying to find a meme that could fit on my profile. And I realized all the funny memes I liked are images, you know, and you can't do that for a caption. So then I remember, I think at the end, like just did like some time travel meme or something. Like I didn't even know existed. Like Ben had to tell me. And then, yeah, I was just like, you know what, from now on, I'm just going to, whenever I change my profile picture, I'm just going to either do something like really like a one line troll statement or just no caption. Like, I don't care. This is not
Okay.
worth it.
Alex had so much post anxiety, like anxiety to post. Like
Oh, yeah.
he like wanted me to look at his things so many times. Like, do you think this is good? Should I change a wording? Should I make it shorter? Should I like use this meme over this meme? And I feel like that's like it may have been a little exaggerated in Alex's case, but in general, there is a lot of like anxiety to post something because like as we said earlier on like social media, you want to portray like your funniest self, your best self, your like et cetera, you know? And so I think like a lot of people like spend a lot of time like coming up with captions, maybe longer than it takes to like take the photo, you know?
Definitely. You want to put the best image up there, the best caption. Is it funny enough? Is it vulnerable enough? And you actually talk about like, guys, did you see my post? Can you go like my post? Or like, hey, I saw your post last week about whatever. It has become like almost like an event, an anxiety inducing, like, here we go. I'm putting it out there, there it is. Please like it.
Actually, that is me. Whenever I change my profile picture or like I post something, I'll just like, take my phone and then just like turn it like so I don't see the notifications light up because I get so, I'm it's really sad I have to do this, but I get sad if like I don't get that many likes because like to me that's like validation, like there's a reason why Instagram had to remove that the ability to view likes on like other people's posts because like there's just so much comparison, right? You'd be like, oh, this person got 240 likes and they got 20 birthday wishes on their Facebook, like, but I only got whatever, and then it's like a very sad way to live. But like I feel like that is something that kind of social media has fostered that like maybe it hasn't necessarily happened before because like there just wasn't anything like it, right? But dude, for sure I get so much post anxiety. Yeah.
That thing that you said about posting and then hiding, that's such a classic for me. Like I post an Instagram picture and I'll just exit the app, quit the app, don't even look at it, come back like
Yeah.
3 hours later. And then when you see like that notification that has the number and if you see like the text bubble, which means like people commented on it, you're like, oh my gosh, like they liked it. Like the people liked it.
Dude, for sure. And especially if it's like someone or you see like so and so has commented, you're like, oh wow, like I didn't know we were like that great of friends, but like they commented, like they must like actually really like me, and you feel so cool, and then yeah, it's just so dumb. And I just remember just being like, I would not like want to go on Instagram or Facebook for like the next like couple of days because like it takes a while for people to like everyone to see the posts, and then it's only after that I'm like, okay, I can finally browse Facebook in peace. I don't have to feel like sad or anxious that I'm not getting a notification that someone liked or commented, and yeah, it's so stupid. But that's me.
I love that social media has its own language and undertones. Like if you tag somebody in a meme or you mention them in a comment on something or whatever, that's saying something more than just like, and maybe, you know, I'm not reading too much into it, but in general, like people will notice and say, hey, you know, you've been tagging her. Yeah, she's been tagging you in some memes. Or it's just like when someone comments, like you're saying more than just what your comment is saying. You're literally saying like your post is worth my time, or I'm intentionally putting my name on your post. I'm trying to get your attention. So there's just this whole entire web of like things that are not actually being said, but you know what they're really saying, or like, you know, what are you really saying? And sometimes you read too much into it and there's nothing to it, but sometimes you're not. And I just think that's the interesting thing about social media is like there's so much beneath what you're actually seeing in all these different dynamics. And people have different motivations and different you know, habits and all that stuff. So I've always thought that was really interesting and unique to social media.
Yes, kind of like observing body language. Like when you're in person, but you know, obviously since you're not in person, like this is kind of what the body language are like, you know, I don't know, context clues or I don't know what it's called, but yeah, it's like the things that are unsaid and sometimes speak louder than words, you know. Yeah, I've definitely done that where like I see a guy, one of my guy friends like tag a girl, and I just be like, huh, something's up, you know. And later I find out like they're dating, and I'm just like, yeah, I saw it coming, right? And then you know, the funniest part is when they're just like, oh, like, were you surprised? I was like, nah.
Like what's even funnier is that you're like, I saw it coming with like no like amount of them telling you. It's like you just like see it, you're just like scrolling and you're just like, oh, and you like note it, and then that's it. But then somehow you're like not surprised because of it.
You've already made that link. This action means this real dynamic.
Yeah. And it's funny that like you may never even interact or see them interact, but because they're tagging each other in memes, you're just like, I know. And yeah, sometimes I wonder like, will people ever hesitate to tag someone in a meme because they're afraid of like the image it will produce, right? Like okay, you're
I've
afraid.
done
You're
that
afraid.
before. Yeah, I've been afraid before.
Because like
Still
sometimes
am.
I get afraid to tag someone, but not necessarily because of like the image associated. I'm just like, are we tight enough that like I can tag you in the meme? Like, will it seem weird like if I tagged you in like this meme? So like I just don't, right? So I feel like I tag very few people in memes, but when someone tags me in a meme, I'm just like, regardless of who, I'm just like, nice, like I'm in, you know. And my day is made, or the next couple of hours are made. But, yeah.
Actually, yeah, it feels like you have permission to tag them back. But also, like another thing that I like hesitate to tag people is like sometimes it's like a risky meme, you know? And so then you gotta like save it and then send it to them.
Because you know that when you tag them, other people can see that you've tagged them in it. So it's like you're not only sharing it with them, but you're sharing with the world. Hey, I shared this meme with this person, and so like, what do you think about that? And like, do I want to be tagging people in RuneScape memes all, you know, all across Facebook? Do I care? You know?
Dude. But yeah, I feel like also depends on like sometimes I'm like if I join like a certain group, like 'cause there's a lot of like whatever subtle Asian like spin-off groups, like there's subtle Asian, you know, like fitness to subtle Asian aesthetics, you know, subtle Asian cooking. Sometimes I'll kind of look to see who's in the group, and then I'll just be like, okay, is it safe to tag, or is it safe to be tagged, or yeah, stuff like that. Or sometimes I'll look in the group and just be like, dude, y'all didn't add me, but I thought about adding y'all. I'm just like, it's not. I've been betrayed.
That hurts.
I had to add myself to subtle Asian traits. That hurt. No one thought of adding me. It was
We
it's
thought
that
you were
time.
already in it. That's why we all thought you were already there.
That's a good excuse. Sometimes I'll use that excuse when people are just like, oh, like you didn't wish me happy birthday or something, and I'll just be like, I thought a lot of people wish you happy birthday. Or sometimes it legitimately is just like I don't use the web version of Facebook anymore, so then I just like literally don't see it. Because I feel like that's the main reason why people wish people happy birthday, right? Like you just see like some notification pop up like wish this person happy birthday, or like if that person is like I guess lucky per se, like they'll see a lot of people wish them happy birthday on like their timeline. That's the only other reason. But other than that, it's just like I'm not like I feel like it's just weird to just know, you know, like it's just weird to like it's just the weird thing about social media is just like you're expected to share stuff, but people are not expected to look you up, right? Like they call it creeping, right? Like if I search someone on Facebook, People are like, why are you doing that? That's so creepy. And I'm just like, I'm just utilizing Mark Zuckerberg's feature as he attended, you know? Like, I'm doing everyone a solid. But yeah, no shame. Shame is for the weak.
Yeah. Like that kind of reminds me of LinkedIn's thing where if you don't set the setting a certain way, like if you look at someone's profile, they can know that you specifically look at their profile. And unless you go on and change that into like an anonymous, setting, people will know like, oh yeah, Alex looked at my profile today or whatever. And that just gives me so much anxiety.
Dude, I actually just stopped caring for LinkedIn. Like I just be like, I'm gonna look anyway. But then someone's like, oh, you can turn off like your visibility feature. So then I did that.
Yeah.
But then some people got premium. So then I was like, you know what, F it, who cares? Yeah. It's basically social media is making us way too self-conscious.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Anyway, wrapping things up because we're a little over the hour mark. This is a question we usually just like to ask like all of our guests like at the end of our podcast. But what are your plans post quarantine?
I'm gonna go back to DC. I kind of miss my work friends and my church and being over there in general. So as much as it's comfortable being home, um, it just sort of feels like this is a bit of a limbo state, kind of a you don't know how long it's gonna last. But probably go back to DC after quarantine, work, and kind of hope that life feels like normal again. I definitely want to grab some Korean barbecue with friends. Like that'll be perfect.
For sure, it would be nice going to like restaurants and not feeling guilty. Or honestly, dude, I don't even remember what it's like to go to a restaurant. It just feels too long ago. I'm just used to
Yeah,
doing
I just
everything on
want to
takeout.
go and eat. Yeah, I want to be at a restaurant, go and eat and feel safe and not be weird. Like, okay, we're eating at a restaurant, kind of weird. Like, I want it to feel like the way it was before. I just don't know how long it's going to take for us to get there.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know. Hopefully, things turn back to normal. Apparently, there was good news that like Moderna or however you say that company's name, like they had a first they had a successful first trial of like vaccines, and which is like really fast, surprisingly. Like I feel like the fastest a vaccine has ever been developed was like 4 years for Ebola. And I think now everyone's kind of pulling out the stops. They're tired of being at home all day and doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, wrapping things up. This was a fun conversation about social media and our anxiety that comes with it. Anyway, yeah, this is Nuanced Nonsense. We're not experts, but we just like talking. Signing out.